So in this video, I want to cover the darker side to high ticket sales and really entrepreneurship and online business as a whole that not many people actually speak about. Now, I've been in this space for around 6 years and I've built 2 7-figure companies, one of which is Club Closer, where I've coached and worked with over 600 sales reps. So as you can imagine, I've seen pretty much every single outcome imaginable. And after seeing many sales reps succeed and go on to exceed 30K a month in income, these are the things that really separate the guys that, have a significant amount of success in the long run from those that burn out and eventually leave the industry, not have success, or ultimately become very unhappy, even though they've significantly increased their incomes. They will determine whether you build a sustainable career that you love and that you can set yourself up for life for, or you're gonna end up being another burnout statistic in the industry. So if you're already in high ticket sales or you're thinking about getting into the industry, this might be the most important video you watch. So let's dive into it. So the first game change to understand is that your strongest asset as a closer isn't a script or your ability to objection handle, it's your genuine belief in what you're selling. And the unfortunate truth within the industry is that there's a lot of shit. There's a lot of bad offers, illegitimate businesses, fake results, fake people. And the world we live in now, where it's never been easier to start a business and make money online, which is amazing, but there's the flip side to it that it opens doors for a lot of bad people to take advantage of. So you really have to be selective with who you work with, right? You want to work with people that you genuinely believe in them and you genuinely believe in their businesses. You have to do your homework. You have to do your research with who you work with. And you really want to make sure that you have full conviction in who you work with and what you sell. A classic example could be like a crypto offer, for example, right? Like, are the results they're pumping out actually real? Are they delivering results? And ultimately, are they helping people? Versus, and that's not me saying I'm shitting on crypto offers. There are some guys out there that do teach genuinely good stuff. But the flip side to it could be like a business coach that, has results. They provide value and you can see it in their content. And they have this big business that ultimately it's undeniable that they're good at what they do, right? Versus maybe a crypto guy online and you see a lot of these trading guys that drive around rented Lambos, rent big villas in Dubai to film their ads. And ultimately there isn't really any substance. They're not really providing any value. They're just promising quick results without really any understanding of how or showing any value that someone can actually then go and build off, right? So, and this is why your conviction really is your biggest superpower. And you'll be able to close so much more effectively and ultimately sleep easier at night and be proud of what you do as you're genuinely helping people because you have that conviction. And here I can speak from my own experience with starting my own coaching program, Club Closer. I only started it after 3 years of being in the online space and I'd already built a 7-figure business that had done a consistent 12 months plus of 100K plus months. So when I did launch that coaching business, although I had zero social proof, no client results, no testimonials, and not really a social presence, and if I'm honest, I hadn't even really built the product yet, I was still able to sell 10 plus people on working one-on-one with me. And that's just because I had unwavering conviction that I knew I could help people and I knew what I was offering had true value to it. And I felt incredibly strongly around the teaching style and the kind of value I was bringing to the market and the approach I would take within the space in order to get those people results. And when you truly believe in what you're selling, your conviction, it becomes unshakable, right? Prospects can feel the difference and your close rates are going to naturally increase. So when you're looking at getting an offer or when you're looking at getting a good offer, I want you to imagine this picture, right? Like, what's your intuition telling you? When you do your research, when you do your homework on an offer, are you really feeling like, yeah, this guy is closer to this angel in which I have conviction in what I'm going to sell, I can see the value in his business? Or is it close to this where it's not really clear, it doesn't really make sense, and ultimately it's full of a lot of kind of empty promises? Empty promises, sure, big commission checks, maybe, but there's no value there, there's no substance, and ultimately you're not going to feel good about selling it. And really, this is why I'm incredibly selective with who I work with, what I work on, and really what I promote online. It has to be in full alignment with what I believe in. And the point I really want to get across here, whilst I know of closers that, have sold and sell products that they don't 100% believe in, and whilst they're able to still sell those products and make a good income from it, they're somewhat handicapping themselves because those companies don't last. The money is fleeting and, you're hurting your close rate in the long run if you're not working with full alignment. You know, if you're selling a bad offer and you are really good at sales, you've taken the time to learn the skill, and you might be able to sell it at 20%, right? Because in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't know if this person I'm selling is actually going to get results, versus selling for this person where you might be able to close near a 40% because you have full conviction. You're in full alignment with what they actually do. And this process of being selective, it's not limiting your income. It's actually, you know, the secret to scaling beyond what most closers actually go on and achieve. Because when you're working in full alignment with what you're selling, you'll close way more deals with less effort. You avoid that burnout that comes from forcing yourself to sell something that you ultimately don't actually believe in. And the second point I really want to talk about here is the emotional roller coaster that is sales. You know, there are very high highs in sales and there are very low lows. And the dark side of it is that you might go through a week or a couple weeks where you sell nothing. You're struggling to sell and you're getting in your own head. You're focusing on the sales so much and you're coming across as desperate or needy on these sales calls, which never translates to closing deals. But on the flip side to it, you could be absolutely cleaning up. You could be making 10K in a week, right? And you feel like you're on top of the world. You're top of this roller coaster. You're on a really high high. And it's this kind of juxtaposition between these really high highs and these really low lows that you need to manage as a sales rep, right? And it's something a lot of sales reps struggle with. You know, they need to balance their emotions and find kind of this middle ground in which they operate from, where they don't get extremely excited about closing deals, they don't get extremely excited about making a load of money, and they don't get extremely depressed or upset on themselves when they don't close people or they have a period of a dry patch. And they have to understand that this is part of the game. This is part of sales. This is part of business. There's not like this consistency of wins where you're just going up and up and up and up. You're going to have these downs too. It's being able to face these challenges and face these battles with that level head, with that kind of level of consistency where you're never getting too excited, you're never getting too upset, and you operate from kind of this one frame. And of course, this takes time. You know, if you're a sales rep just entering to the space, of course you're going to get really excited when you close your first deal. And of course, it might start eating you up when you hit your first low, but just know it's going to come and be aware of it. But taking the time to actually master this, and don't attribute your kind of self-worth to your close rate or your cash collected, but attribute it to the actual skill set that you've built. Because ultimately, when you know that you've built this solid skill set, that you can then operate from this one frame, right? And it's going to take time, and it's like a muscle. You need to train it to actually get better at it. And if you're able to operate out of this one frame, you won't have these crazy highs and these crazy lows, because these lows are the things that can really eat you up. And they're often why closers, you know, might leave offers when they've hit a dry patch themselves. They feel like they're capping out. They feel like they're incapable. But actually having this kind of state management, don't underestimate it. It's incredibly powerful, and it's going to maintain your sanity and give you a hell of a lot of confidence if you're able to master this. And the third point I really want to raise is, and it should be kind of obvious, but often I still feel victim to it this day, but it's not forgetting to live, right? Obviously, you found this incredible financial vehicle that can allow you to make 10, 20, 30, 40K a month, right? And that's great. And obviously, in sales, it's very much like the more calls you take, it often equals more money, right? And this is the narrative we kind of operate from, because you think, I can take more calls. If I take more calls, I'll close more and I make more money, which is great. And oftentimes that is the case, but there needs to be a level where you can sustain it, right? And there's going to become a point where you get burnt out, right? And you don't want to burn yourself out or, you know, attach your self-worth to collecting more cash or closing these more deals, because it can become incredibly damaging. You know, there's much more to life than just sitting behind your laptop and closing deals 24/7. And I've seen it. I've seen many closers lock themselves away. They hit these 10K months and call it greed, call it ambition, like whatever you want. And ultimately, I'm not telling you what to do per se. Like, if you really do love locking yourself in a room and running 12 hours of sales calls, go and do it. But ultimately, I don't want you to sit there and keep grinding and grinding and grinding just to make another couple grand a month, when ultimately you've already built this income to a certain level that you've always wanted, that you forget the very reason as to why you started in the first place. And often I see that, and I fall victim to this. And the reason I put this photo on this slide is because there's been many times in my life, and this being one of them, where I've got so caught up in continuing to push, where I don't actually realize that the situation I'm in is the situation I've always dreamed of. I don't know if you recognize this, but this is Soho Farmhouse, a place I always wanted to go. And me and my girlfriend now, when we're back in England, we'll go there every now and then as a weekend away, right? To try and unwind, to try and relax. But one of the most recent times I went, I was so in my own head on continuing to work and continuing to push that I felt incredibly anxious. I didn't really enjoy it, and I was worrying about all these things in business. Whereas if I really just zoomed out, I could have really enjoyed that weekend. I could have really had a good time and kind of put business to the side for a minute and realize like, this is actually something I've always wanted. I've always wanted to go on a weekend away like this where, this place is relatively expensive and I want to be able to enjoy it. And, I didn't really think about the price of it back then because obviously my income's at a certain level now, but to continue to grind and to continue to kind of make myself feel anxious over a little bit more money isn't ultimately going to change the outcome here, because that's everything I've always wanted. And there's this trend going around on the internet, you've probably seen it, like you almost forgot that this is the whole point and that's the whole reason you're doing it. So yeah, don't forget to live. Remember your why. And whilst you're in a good vehicle, and there's going to become a time where if you're just getting started, you are going to have to grind, you are going to have to lock yourself away, you are going to have to build up the skill set and really make sure you're positioning yourself in the right way. And you're not going to be, spending money on weekends away or taking time off. But when you do get to a point where you hit that goal, make sure to appreciate it. Really make sure you understand your why. Why you started in the first place, what you actually wanted to achieve. And if you've kind of created this environment where you're actually able to do that, make sure you actually appreciate it. Because I often don't, and I'm still to this day trying to get better at it. But taking the time to actually live outside of your work, outside of your sales call, it kind of, in the bigger picture, it really helps, because you don't want to resent the work and you don't want to think like in this frame of sort of scarcity or always pushing for more, because you need to step away every now and then. And despite what gurus tell you online, where you've got to work 24 hours a day, you never want to stop hustling. Like, the fact you stop hustling for a second actually allows you to hustle harder in the long run. And ultimately, if you're watching this, I hope you're in it for the long run. This isn't a quick game. You're not in it for a quick buck. You actually want to build a life that you truly enjoy. And taking the time to enjoy it whilst you're building it is super important. And the next point here is managing your money. This is a touchy one, but it's often something I see with closers where they kind of make more money than they've ever made in their entire lives and they don't know what to do with it, right? And ultimately they go and spend it. It's kind of stupid, because even though closing and being a sales rep in the online space is incredibly profitable, everything you make is actually profit. You don't have business expenses. You're getting hit with this commission check every single month, providing you close well. Oftentimes 20 grand hitting your bank account might be a number you've never seen before, and it might become unfamiliar, but actually having access to that money, and therefore you go on social media, you see the watches, you see the cars, you see the crazy lifestyle, and you decide, okay, cool, I make money now, so I should go and spend it. Doesn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. If you're going to spend your money, like, you have to understand why you're spending it. Ultimately, like, if you're making 20 grand a month as a closer at this point, after a 2-year period, it can go one of two ways. You could end up like this guy, in which he's got no money left. He's got nothing to show for it, because he's just spending frivolously, I think that's how you say it. And he's not really thinking about the future or future-proofing himself or being smart with his money. Or you can be like Monopoly Man here, where he's putting money in assets, he's saving, he's living below his means, and he's making sure he's actually building up this pile of wealth that ultimately is going to serve him for the rest of his life. And, the way you kind of invest is ultimately what it comes down to. Can be, and I obviously encourage you to do your own research on this, but that could be that you continue to invest in coaching and training so that you can continue to upskill yourself and actually get better. Or it could be the case that you want to diversify into other sort of investment vehicles like the S&P 500, real estate, or whatever it is you're passionate about or you feel would actually make you money. But it's being smart with your money, because a lot of people don't. They hit their first 10K month, they buy their first Rolex and they think, wow, I've made it, but they've got nothing to show for it. And 2 years go by and they're flat broke, right? They're continuing to push. And coming back to the last point, like, as a closer, obviously you're working to make your money, right? It's not a passive income thing by any means. I don't really believe in passive income as a whole. So it's like, you make 20K one month, You spend it, the next month rolls around, you're back at zero. You're back having to stack your commission again. And you don't want to constantly live in this fear of like, okay, well, if I don't make commission next month, I'm going to have nothing to show for it because I've spent everything. And it's often what I see. And I really advise that, like, if you are making good money, and the thing I've written here, like, if you have more money than you know what to do with, it doesn't mean you should spend it. The best thing you can do with it is just sit on it and decide how to use it in the best way possible. Because going from making $3,000 a month in your current sales role to 20 grand a month is such a leap. You've got access to all this funding, all this more money. Spending it is the worst thing you can do. And just having that awareness and managing your money in the best way possible is going to set you up for the future. And really, it's long-term thinking, right? Like, if you suddenly get an influx of 20K a month and you spend it all, well, what happens if you go and start a business later down the line, right? And you make 100 grand a month? You're probably going to do the same thing and spend it. So you're constantly living in this cycle of living way beyond your means. So managing your money is another thing that no one really talks about, because a lot of closers do enter the space and they do make a significant increase in their incomes, but they don't know what to do with it. They spend it, they buy the watches, and they've got nothing to show for it after a couple years. And so coming on to the last point is where I see a lot of closers handicap themselves again, is they just stop learning, right? And I use this 20K arbitrary number as an example, right? 20K closer thinks of himself as a king, right? He's crushing it. He's making such good money. No one's made that kind of money in his family before. None of his friends make that kind of money. And he thinks, I've made it. I'm the top, right? But ultimately, if you get into this game of sales, like, probably being a sales rep isn't the end goal for you, right? You might want to go off and start your own business. You obviously want to retire at one point, or, start something of your own, or go on and take on more responsibility within a business, whether that's your own or for someone else. And these closers that hit the top and become top of the teams, they often kind of, I guess I should really redraw this guy sitting down, because he's not actually standing. He's taking it easy. He's chilling. He's relaxing now because he's top, right? But whilst he's sat at the top and he's making 20K a month, you've got these closers that obviously more people are entering this space every single day, and they're fighting. They're fighting for, wow, I'm so bad at drawing. And they could all be at 10, right? But out of these 4, this one guy continues to learn, right? He continues to push himself, and he's quickly going to overtake this guy. And you could look at this as like a set of stairs, right? Your king closer, 20K a month, he's top. He thinks he's reached the top of his staircase, and he's done, and he's chilling, and he's happy, right? That doesn't mean his other sales reps can't overtake him. And that also means that if he does want to go on and do something else, and he wants to go and start his own business, he's not setting himself up in the right way, because he's mastered sales, he's great at it, but there's so many other skill sets that come into starting your own business or building wealth in the long term, right? So my advice is, if you're a closer and you're on a great offer, you've got such a good opportunity to continue to learn. You're literally working incredibly closely with these business owners that obviously are far more experienced than you. They've got a lot more knowledge. They're obviously able to build a business up to 7, 8, 9 figures a year. You should be learning from them as much as possible. You should be looking at things in terms of, trying to understand the marketing, trying to understand ops, trying to understand management, right? And learn from them as much as you can, because then you'll realize that, like, 20K a month, that isn't the top. Like, you can keep pushing and you can keep building up and up and up, where you can then go and start your own business, right? I can give the example for me. Like, 10K a month was always the goal when I first started out. And I thought when I hit 10K a month, I was top. That was it. Perfect. 100 grand a year, travel the world, live freely, do as I please. And I don't want this to sound egotistical, but I just had this fire to keep learning. And I'm always in this frame of like, well, what can I learn from him? What can I learn from her? Who's got more knowledge than me that I can extract? Because still, like, with 2 businesses that have done multiple 7 figures a year in revenue, I don't feel like I'm at the top. I feel like I'm nowhere near it. And I bash my ego aside, as impressive as that is to many people. I still know there's so much more I want to do. So I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep pushing. And as a closer, you should do the same, because 20K a month might sound beautiful. It might sound awesome, but if you can get to there, you can get so much further. I think going from 0 to 10 or 20K a month is actually more difficult than going from 20 to 100K, right? Because you've got this fundamental skill set of sales already. That's the most important thing. You know how to sell. That's important in any business. So why not leverage those skills more so in going and doing more in the future and continuing to push yourself? Because if you continue to learn at every given stage and you drop the ego, you'll be able to keep pushing, and you'll be able to get to 100K, 200K, 300K. Hell, I hope you surpass me. I hope I surpass me. And yeah, that's kind of the last point. It's continue to learn, because the minute you stop learning, you're kind of fucked. Like, you're done. You're capped out. There's nothing more you can do. Your 20K a month might last for a long time, and I hope it does, but yeah, you're handicapping yourself massively, and you've taken the time to build this skill set. Why stop there, is my honest opinion. So these are the darker sides of high ticket closing and high ticket sales. You know, if you're able to master all of these, you're putting yourself in a very good stead for a long and prosperous career, whether that be sticking in sales or scaling to much bigger numbers in the future. But I hope you found this video valuable, and if you did, please drop me a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.